Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Filmmakers Live Talk. I am very, very excited to have two beautiful and amazing artists with me, the team of The Inspection. We have the director, Elegance, Bratton.
Hello.
And the producer, Chester Algernal Gordon. Thanks so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, you pronounced my name right.
I
That's
did?
the first time.
No way. I tried hard. I'm gonna be honest. It's Munich Pride.
Yes.
You went.
Yeah.
How was it?
Very prideful.
Yes. Super gay.
Was it?
It was really gay.
Surprisingly gay.
For a pride. I mean, I've been to a lot of prides, but this is one of the gayest ones I've ever seen. It was fun. Yeah, gay. So, no, it was a lot of really young kids and their parents and lesbian moms and gay dads. It was really cool.
It's exciting seeing self-expression.
Before we start talking about your beautiful film, let's talk about Pride a little more, because I think that there is some sort of movement right now, because the political situation in Germany and in a couple of provinces in Germany is not that easy right now. So we did have a trans reading, or we were supposed to have one, and then there was like a political issue happening in Munich. So right now the movement in the city is really, really big and supportive, and there are a lot of people going on the street to support trans artists and trans people to like help push the politics a more less right wing. So is that something that you experience as well in the United States right now?
Actually, right now, they're trying to cancel drag in the United States. They think that drag is dangerous for children and for people to see. So we're actually having huge debates around America about why drag is important for society.
Yeah, and I think, I think this is the nature of civil rights struggle, is that you start off in a very draconian place. People feel extremely oppressed, so much so that they demand to be heard, demand to be seen. That demand gives people who may have been silent bravery to be allies. And then you get the feeling of progress. Laws change in America. Gays can get married and gays can be in the military. But now we're on the other side of that, where there's a backlash, right? Where so much progress has been made that people who, it's kind of confusing to me, because it's like white men in America, they feel like they've lost something. And I'm like, but you still make more money than everybody else. You still are in college more than anybody else. You still own more businesses than anybody else. But nonetheless, those who are oppressing feel the difference because our movements are working. And now they're trying to push back against that. And I think this is unfortunately, it's the ebb and flow of liberal society, democratic society. And right now in the state of Florida, and really half of the country, you can't even say gay out loud. You can't say, I am gay. This is a gay organization.
It's illegal.
The banning of drag is really an attempt to ban trans people, right? Because if we're saying that people can't dress in the opposite sex's clothing, who does that impact, right? You can say that a trans person is in drag and all of a sudden they can go to jail. So, for me, what it's about is about constant vigilance. We are, as a Black person in America, I have it deeply within my DNA that the struggle for rights continues, even though those rights might be legally afforded you, right? You don't ever take a break from it. You don't ever say, okay, we've arrived. You never arrive. You're always in a searching for equality, because the moment you think you're complacent, the moment you think it's all good,
It's not.
here comes the other side to put it back where it was.
Exactly. And I mean, we do live in strange times right now where this is precisely happening again, right? And I mean, that's certainly like maybe the bridge to your film, because I mean, your film is a very personal film. And I mean, lots of people here probably haven't seen it just yet, because the premiere is tomorrow. Make sure to tell everyone to join us for the premiere tomorrow. Maybe you can give us a little insight into your film, first of all, and a little bit of an introduction so that we get the people in. I mean, they've all read our beautiful introduction here, but I would love to hear your own personal view on it.
My pleasure. And again, thank you for programming the film and flying us out here. It's been such a wonderful experience to be in Germany for the first time. My film is called The Inspection, It's about a homeless black gay man who joins the U.S. Marine Corps in order to win back his mother's love, but ultimately learns how to respect himself by enduring the trials of boot camp. And it's also my story. I spent 10 years of my life homeless. My mother kicked me out of the house for being gay. At the age of 25, I ended up in a homeless shelter for the first time. And I was at a standstill. I called my mom up and begged to come back home, and she said, well, are you still gay? And I'm like, well, yeah, sort of. And she's like, well, you can't live with me. Why don't you join the military? And at the time, it was really kind of painful for me because it felt like she was saying, I'd rather you be blown up in a war than be gay in my house. I'd rather you be shot at than be gay in my house. So I declined. I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing that. And I went back to the shelter. I went back to sleep, and I looked around that room, and I realized that most of the men in that room had been in that room for 20 years, 30 years, much longer than me. I had asked myself if that was my future, and my spirit said no. And then the next morning, I was approached by a Marine recruiter. It was just the Iraq war period. I think the war is over now, I'm pretty sure. It was on for a long time, though. But nonetheless, I said to him, man, if I could look as good in that uniform as you do, sign me up. And as a Marine, I got introduced to photography and filmmaking, and kind of set me on the path to being here right now.
And I mean, still the film is a fictional film. You turned it into a feature film. How far away is the film from your personal story? Like, how much of it did you sort of like change, or did you feel like you had to change because it was maybe too personal?
Speaking of drag, I always say that the film is 100% autobiographical when it comes to the hopes, fears, and desires of its lead character, even if it's not a situation that I personally have been in. But the stuff between the lead character, Ellis, and his mother is 100% out of my life. These are conversations I had with my mom. I think for the autobiographical film, the assumption is that you've been through something in life, you get to a point where you have time to jot it down, and you just kind of write down what happened. And I think when it comes to trauma, very often the brain kind of does its own thing, and it reconstructs events according to how the human being needs them to be to cope with them. So I kind of leaned into that and just, explored the fears that I had in boot camp and rooted in the truth of the relationship dynamic with my mother.
And then maybe the two of you can expand on that a little bit, because I'm assuming that you were a part of the project for a very long time, right? So did that also, exactly, so that was probably essential to the film as well. So how was your perspective on his personal story?
Sure. So me and Elegance were married. We've been together for almost a decade now. I remember...
Met on Jacked, by the way, if you're looking for someone.
It's like less subtle than Grindr, but...
It can work.
But he was, we started dating, and we started working together, and he started writing 3 features, and I was like, I think the feature you should go with is the one that's more personal to you, because the other 2 features anybody can make, And I feel like when a filmmaker first starts, their first project to the world, it should be something like a great photo, something you expose yourself in a way that you can't take back, essentially. Like you're giving the world something. And I was like, I feel like The Inspection was that film. It was like, you should tell the personal story. And he did the personal story. He wrote the script. We applied to a bunch of labs in America. We applied to like the Sundance labs and all that stuff. We didn't get any of it. Finally, we applied to the Tribeca lab, I think. Yeah. Rest in peace, Tribeca. We got Tribeca. Also got the Film Independent Producing Lab, and I met F.E.T. Brown, my producing partner, that also runs Game Changer at the last LA Film Festival. And I went up to Effie. I was like really drunk, and I was like, "Bitch, you gonna make my movie?" She's like, and she looked at me, and she's like, "What's your name?" Like, And she took a photo. She took a selfie with me, and she said, "Well, call me tomorrow and send me an email." and she never responded to any of the emails.
For years.
So, so then we got Fast Track for Film Independent, where we got to pitch 60 people in a room, and we were the best pitch in the room. And we walked out with maybe like 8 different companies wanting to make the film, and 2 people that work for Film Independent called Effie, because she's also a fellow from Film Independent.
I just want to add into this because it's A24 film as well. So
Yes.
I've wrote the first draft of this in 2017, right around the time that one of my best friends got hired as an executive at A24. And I literally sent him an email, and I was like, dude, I have a script that will change your career. All you have to do is read it and say yes. This is an A24 film. He read it, and he's like, this is not an A24 film. And
Why not? Why not?
you know, I think in the grand scheme of things, if there's any advice, if any of you guys are filmmakers and you're in that kind of limbo of making your first feature, in that situation, it was a no, because the whole company has to say yes. It's not just your executive that's the doorway in. The executive is bringing you in so that everybody in the company can enthusiastically say yes.
The marketing people,
everybody. The PA, the assistants in the office, everybody at A24 was really excited about this film by the time they said yes. Because another piece of advice I can give is, like, sometimes they can say no to my company making the film, but if they say, hey, why don't you send me your next draft? I like this. Maybe this part was a little bit confusing. That's development. And at the time, I didn't really know it. I thought it was a no. I thought the door was closed. Meanwhile, over the course of 4 years, or 3 years, I got all these notes from him that was changing the script, so that it could be a thing that everyone in the office could say yes to. And it's not to say that you should change yourself to fit anybody's mottos, right? But for me, I like to take the things that are useful and leave the things that are not. And if you find yourself in that kind of relationship with an executive, it might take 3 years, but you're not necessarily at a no, you're at a not right now.
Did he or did they tell you why it was not an A24 film?
He's a fool. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But no, I mean, it was one of those things where my initial drafts were, I'm really influenced by people like Claire Denis, folks like Pedro Costa. No, that's a porn star. I'm sorry.
Mike Lee.
Mike Lee, thank you. Oops.
Well, I mean, it's also movies, right?
Yeah, they're movies. But the first draft of the script was a much more kind of like experiential thing. It wasn't so much plot driven. And I think that version of it for him, it was just hard to latch on to, like, what is the story, what's going on. I also come from a documentary background, and it's something that I lived through. So a lot of those first drafts were me kind of like recalling what it was to be in boot camp, but not necessarily like having a particular point of view from any character's perspective. So I think those are some of the reasons it was a no. But ultimately it was a no because he couldn't get everybody to say yes. No. And that's how it works. And you don't want to go to a company where everybody is not enthusiastic about your film.
No, because you'll be on the back burner.
You will be back burnered. You will spend the money, shoot the movie, and 3 years later, you'll be like, where is my movie? Yeah. You really want people to be on your side.
And I think that the thing about film is it's a complete collaboration. Like, the director is directing, but I think everybody is a director of their own department. So, like, your costume designer, rather, is a director of costumes. Your production designer is directing how the movie looks. Your cinematographer is directing the picture. Your producer is controlling your money. So I think that when you and your executive is, like, supposed to be like your creative hand in a sense. So I think that, like, every idea that's coming from all these people is the director's idea, because they're only making your vision come true. So I think when you take the best ideas, you know, when you talk about it, it's your film that you're talking about, you know? So I think that I've worked with so many directors, and some people get so precious about little things, but they end up coming back anyway. But it's just a process, and it's the filmmaking process, essentially, that, you know, you lose things, you put them back in, you know, you go around in a circle and realize that you had it already. You know?
It is really interesting what you're saying, that you sort of like see your film as a whole product as well. I mean, very often product is a very not so nice word to call a film, but in the end it is, because we need marketing and we want people to see films, and there are a lot of films out there. So it's like, so is that something that you really try to think along the way on a very early stage in a way?
No.
Big time. Big time. You'll see me. For instance, I'm writing. I'm doing a documentary right now, editing a documentary about Chicago house music, and I had a meeting with my editor recently, and in the course of the meeting, I'm kind of like, because we shot like a whole 50 hours of footage, and it's got to be cut down into a 90-minute film. So I'm just trying to give him like kind of big ticket concepts of like how I experienced the movie, and I don't remember exactly what the point was, but one of the things I said was like I wouldn't say this on a panel, but this is what the film is, so I'm always kind of thinking about like, okay, once the movie is done and you have hopefully a great narrative that you've recorded, then it becomes the public narrative, right? The story of like how that movie lives in the world. And I'm very keen on like, I knew for the inspection I had to have an out queer Black actor. I knew that because this young man is going to be on all the talk shows. He's going to be on all the red carpets, and they're going to be like, what was it like to play a gay person? And like me growing up, I remember, so movies that I love too, movies like Philadelphia, movies like even Moonlight, right? Where the actors are so just insistent that they're not gay, and how weird it is to kiss a boy, and that type of thing. For me growing up, it had a negative impact on me. It made me feel like there was something kind of like less than about myself. So I knew that I didn't want to create that message. So it had to be an out queer actor for this particular gay part that I wrote. But that is, to your question, that is a part of thinking about the marketing of the film, and like what are the messages that can like help the film last a whole run in a theater and online, and hopefully in people's lives forever.
Yeah. Or even our posters and all of our images on set. I took maybe like 1,500 Polaroids that became the way that the images, like I showed them to the photographers every day, and it became the images of the film. Like our album with Animal Collective, the inside is all Polaroids that I took during the filming. Like all of it was thought of ahead of time of how, like the document, like back again to documentary, but for it to look like it was a doc in the images. So to look like it was actual boot camp, to look like, it's a real place and a real time, essentially.
Let's talk about that a little more. Was that something that you aimed for, like a little bit of like a doc style?
I consider The Inspection to be something of a hybrid film. When you're in French's point of view, who's the lead character, it's beau travail, the camera is handheld, it's highly subjective, empathetic, and pointed. When we see French in the world, the camera is on sticks, the shots are extremely composed and geometric, so that I'm creating a visual language to talk about what it's like to be Black and queer in the United States Marine Corps in the early 2000s. And in short, you're standing on shaky ground, right? You're trying to fit into a rigid system as yourself, and that experience of being yourself can be rocky, like the handheld camera, But I started making documentaries first. I made documentaries in the Marines, and then my first movie that I released was called PIER KIDS. It's a documentary about 3 queer and trans Black homeless youth who are on Christopher Street Pier in the West Village of New York City, which incidentally is people consider it to be one of the places that the United States gay rights movement started from, with Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. So, having that experience of I shot that movie for 5 years. I was the only camera person. I'm always thinking in that moment, especially like, okay, I don't have $1 million. I don't have a whole crew. Gratefully, I met Chester towards the end of that process, so I had someone on my side to help me finish it. What do I have, right? I have my access. I have this, how do I make the camera into a peer kid, was a thought that I always asked myself making that film. I know for The Inspection, how do I make that camera into Ellis French? And everything I've done since then has always been about subjective camera, and that has to, it only comes from my documentary experience, for sure. So I'm always kind of like, I kind of have what I call cinematic dyslexia, you know, where I can't even tell the difference between documentaries and fiction films. To me, a movie is a movie. There's just two different ways to getting to that process of showing it to the public.
That is very interesting because I mean, like, even here in Germany, we see a lot of like hybrid films as well, where like parts are fictionalized or it's like based on a true story. So a lot of hybrid movies. Would you like in parts consider The Inspection a hybrid movie as well?
For sure. I think, you know, because the thing about it is in a documentary, you could spend like 12 hours filming and then there's 2 minutes and you're like, this is what the whole 12 hours is about. And you rush to try to figure out how to capture that 2 minutes authentically, right? On a feature set, I'm the type of person where it's like I'm very prepared. I know my shots. I know my camera moves. My actors have their marks. And then all of a sudden the actor does something that is just totally unexpected, way better than what you wrote. And now you have to chase it. So yeah, like everything I make is kind of hybridized in that way because I'm the type of person where it's like, you know, hopefully there's no financiers in the audience, but I will, I will, at a certain point in the inspection, there were days where because you're also dealing with the reality of like making an independent film, a first film, that has all these backgrounds and all of this different moving parts, and you only have so much money. So every day I'm always having to rethink the script because we don't have those 10 extras or weren't able to get that tank, right? So in that regard, the documentarian in me has to come out, right? Because I got to figure it the fuck out. I've got 12 hours to make something to go into the movie, you know? So yeah, it's kind of all mixed together.
And just picking the days we go over, you know, like knowing that like we need these shots. So it's like, you know, an argument with the studio, but it's worth it.
It certainly was. Let's see if there are any questions in the audience. Are there questions? I mean, it's kind of hard when you haven't seen the movie yet.
I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions tomorrow.
Exactly. And the good thing is you're going to be around tomorrow for the Q&A. So this is just a teaser, a bit of a teaser to the film. So give it a thought. Nevertheless, there is a question. We do have a microphone.
Hello, first of all, thank you so much. I'm very excited for tomorrow, if there's still tickets available. I hope so.
Check online, yeah.
Okay, thank you. My question would be, how was the casting process for your lead character? Because it is such a personal story. Were you very picky or did you do a long rehearsal process? Yeah.
We can both answer this. For me, I knew it was Jeremy from the beginning, Jeremy Pope, because Jeremy is a phenomenal actor. I saw him on Hollywood, Ryan Murphy's show. I'm not sure if it's probably here. It has to be here.
It is here.
Yeah. But he was great in that. He's also a 2-time Tony nominee in the same year. And he got that accolade while I was still in film school. So he became like a little beacon, you know? Once the movie got to the studios, we went through the studio kind of insisted on an exhaustive process, which I think in the end of it made everything better because Jeremy kind of had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, like, bitch, you know this is my movie, you know? And he had something to prove, and he certainly proved it, you know? And in terms of like, kind of like to your earlier question about marketing, I cannot overstate how helpful it was in terms of buzz building to have every major Black actor want to play this part and read this script and fight for the part. That created a huge conversation in Hollywood that I'm not sure we would have gotten to without that process. And like I said, it had to be an out Black queer actor.
Our casting director was also fabulous, Kim Coleman, by the way. Yeah. Just shout out to Kim.
Recommendation for anyone who wants to shoot in the United States.
Yeah. Well, she cast everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, good.
But if she casts, she might ask for an executive producer credit. But she's worth it.
But she's worth it.
She's 100% worth it.
Yeah.
Are there more questions? I'll give you a little more time to think of questions.
I guess you could tell them why you picked Gabby.
Oh yeah. So Gabrielle Union. Well, first of all, you know, I don't know how it works in the European context, but in the American context, movie stars get movies greenlit. And Gabby was the most bankable name at the start of the process. So she was a really important piece of the puzzle to getting the movie greenlit and fully financed, right? And I didn't speak to my mom for almost 20 years leading up to this movie being greenlit. I wrote this script to reach my mom, for sure. And Gabrielle Union was her favorite actress. So I knew that if I casted Gabrielle Union and she did what I thought she could do, what I believed she could do, and she exceeded what I was hopeful for, and my expectations were quite high, that somebody in my mother's life would tap her on her shoulder and say, hey, Gabrielle Union is pretending to be you, right? And then she would call me, and then we would talk, and then our lives would be fixed and everything would be better. But even more so, Gabby she's a pro. She's been at this for quite some time. She's a producer in her own right. So as a first-time filmmaker, I was surrounded, Gabby, Bokeem, Raul, also Jeremy, right? Jeremy is, these Broadway actors, people talk a lot of trash about musical theater folks, but to do Broadway, 2 performances a day, 4 times a week, to hit those marks and to make it feel fresh every single time, there is a level of accuracy and sharpness that working with an actor like that can only improve my craft, especially as a first-time filmmaker. But I find myself leaning on my actors, leaning on Gabby. Gabby, I don't know what to do. What do I do? You know what I would do? I would put the camera here, put the camera there. I do it in this take, do it in that take. We flip it around. I do it this take, that take, because she's done it 100 times. And I would lean on that experience, and it got me here. Gabby is a real, and she's still in my corner. I can call Gabby at any time and ask her for advice, and we're always trying to find new projects to do together. She's great. I love Gabrielle Union.
May I ask, and you can always say no, you don't want to answer. Did your mom call you?
Unfortunately, my mom passed. She died. She was killed, actually. Was it February of 2020?
Like a week before we were greenlit, or after we got greenlit. We were greenlit.
It was a day after.
It was a day after, yeah. So literally, we got greenlit. We got the call from A24, and then we called Effie and told Effie that A24 was making it, and we brought her on, and then he got a call the next morning.
Yeah, and my mom, so that's the other piece of Gabrielle Union's role in this, is that, when I was in the process of trying to secure her for the film, it was already emotional to go through all of these emotions again and to relive these moments, just to get the script to where it needed to be. That was tough. And then my mom died, and it just changed. Everything was different. Everything felt way more important all of a sudden. And Gabby, I have a deep appreciation for her whole career arc. I'm a huge fan of Gabrielle Union's, but this is one of the first times she's been asked to be a dramatic actress, and she's very far from a homophobic person. She's got a trans daughter that she supports out loud, lovingly. So she was all of a sudden kind of a little shook by the idea, a little scared of the idea of having to portray my mom, because, all of a sudden now, this is it. I'm never going to be able to go back from this film and go to my mom and fix any of this. So whatever the experience we have on set, whatever her performance lands at, that's kind of the bookend of that relationship for me. And Gabby wore my mother's jewelry in the film. She used my mother's Bible, so no, she didn't get a chance. But it's funny how, I don't know if Germans believe in God. I know you guys have a fraught history with that, but,
Well, you're in Bavaria. Bavaria is still very Catholic. You're at the right state.
But it's just funny how God works, because when my mom died, I'd never been to the house that she was living in when she was killed, but I had to clean that house after the fact. And when I went in, I always say that when you're live, everyone's juggling plates. We're all juggling all these plates, trying to look like we have our shit together. And then we die, and all of that comes crashing to the ground. And if you're lucky, you have someone in your life who cares about you enough to put the pieces back together. And the gift that I received was understanding her in a way that she would never allow me to understand her when she was alive. So when I got into her house, she had all these articles written about my film career up to that point. I was on her search engine. I was the picture on her keychain, and I had no idea, and we hadn't spoken for 20 years, so I didn't know I was carrying around so much heaviness over it, and I didn't know that there was way more nuance there than I thought it was. Oh, I hate you because you're gay, I don't want to talk to you. And in reality, I think she was going through a lot of mental health issues that had never gotten diagnosed. And she's a Black woman in America. She's a very smart woman, and she writes about a lot of things. And unfortunately, in her time growing up, a smart, dark-skinned Black woman who spoke her mind, people just slapped her quiet. The men in her life beat her down. The world beat her down. And if you know you have the right answer, and everybody tells you that you're wrong, that would drive anybody crazy, you know? So I'm grateful for all of it. But no, we didn't get a chance to have that moment.
I'm sorry to hear, but thanks so much for sharing this story with us. You world premiered the film at Toronto Film Festival last September. Maybe you can share a little, since we haven't seen the film here. Well, I have, but not everyone in here. Like, how was that world premiere? How were the reactions?
Oh, wow.
How was it?
It was like being Beyonce at the Super Bowl.
It was. It was.
It was like we got there. We had Tom Brown on. Tom Brown dressed us. Gabby was in Vivienne Westwood, and Jeremy was in Valentino, and they took us, we had black cars the entire time. It was in Fancy Hotel. We were in the when we got on the way to the car, Tilda Swinton gave us her phone number in the elevator.
Yeah, I have her number. I texted Tilda Swinton.
It was crazy. But anyway, we had to go through tunnels. It was for Toronto and New York Film Festival. We had to go through tunnels to get to the stage. We had people guiding us. It was very glamorous.
Yeah, and we premiered, and we had
Sounds good.
all the famous actors were at our premiere party. It was it felt like, because Chester and
I don't know you.
Yeah, exactly. It was really cool.
It's like, who are you?
I feel like I've seen your face before.
It was really cool.
Are we friends on Instagram?
We went to the
was like, we
Chanel
can
party.
be.
Went to the Chanel party. I met Tyler
Chanel
Perry.
dressed us.
Chanel dressed us for the party. And the funny thing is, it was as hot as it is now, and Chanel doesn't really do menswear. They certainly don't do a lot of summer menswear. So all they had for me was this hot ass Christmas cardigan.
And he wore it.
I wore that.
You wore it?
I wore it. They took it off. They had to take it off of me because it got so drenched in my sweat that they're like, "You're gonna ruin it if you continue to wear it." I'm like, "Well, okay, take it back then, because I'm not taking it off unless you take it off of me."
Maybe they're going to put it into a museum at some point
They'll have
to honor
now.
you.
But yeah, it's great.
But how were the reactions in the audiences? Because showing it in Toronto and in New York, in Canada and the US is probably going to be a little different from showing it here or in Europe.
Yeah.
So how were they?
Canada was a really great reaction. It was positive. It was a lot of film people and critics there that night. We got mostly positive reviews. We're certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, I guess, whatever that means. But
It's important.
yeah, but that happened. At New York, we had a 15-minute standing ovation, which was kind of incredible.
Yeah, Martin Scorsese saw the movie and told me he loved it. And Martin is kind of my career model, who I want to. Yeah. When I'm 80, I want people to be like, "Wow, he's kind of like Martin Scorsese." You know.
Honestly, it's been since the film premiere to going through the whole campaign and premiering the film to hearing individuals' reactions to the film and how it touched them, Beyonce, Jay-Z introduced Elegance to Beyonce at the Oscar party.
I was at their Oscar party,
and Beyonce was
and I was like, "Jay, please introduce me to Beyonce, because if I talk to her, I'm gonna make a fool out of myself, because I love her so much." And he's like, "Sure, man, come on."
And you went "Oh my God!" Did you do it?
Yeah. And she said, "I love your movie."
Yeah.
She's like,
"That's the first thing she said to me. You're Elegance, and I loved your movie." And I was like, I had all this eloquent stuff in my head to say.
And he was like, "I love your hair. I love your makeup. I love your dress."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's totally understandable. But I'm just going to say, like, the pressure is high, guys. Tomorrow at the premiere, 15 minutes standing ovation.
No.
We need Beyonce to fly in. It's like, you're building up the pressure here for the audiences tomorrow.
Better fucking like it.
No pressure at all.
Just come to the film and yeah,
Enjoy.
enjoy.
Did you have any reactions from the military? Did you show it to the military?
I mean, well, we had many reactions in the military because initially we reached out to the Marine Corps to get approval so we could shoot on an actual base. They said, no, we cannot do this because they didn't really give us a reason, but at the end of the day, it's kind of homoerotic, and maybe they had an issue with that, and there's a lot of, kind of boot camp violence going on, drill instructors doing things they're not supposed to do. They didn't want to get behind, so there was that reaction. And then the movie premiered, and I started to get messages. Well, first of all, a lot of my friends are Marines. I have a lot of friends from when I served, and because it wasn't a sanctioned movie by the Marine Corps, some of the details have to be wrong because it's copywritten, like where you wear your ribbons, where you wear your rank insignia, all of that is kind of intellectual property. So if they don't give you permission, then you can't show it that way. So my buddies who I serve with would be like, yo, man, I watched your movie. Why'd you fuck up the ribbons, bro? You know better than that. You were a corporal. I'm like, I couldn't do it. Yeah, bullshit, man. Good movie, but you made our uniforms look like shit. And then
I will say, one of Elegance's friends saw the movie. One of his best friends from the Marine Corps, who he didn't know was gay, came out to him because he felt like that experience was his own experience. And he's a white gay man, but he came out.
And then I had another guy, this Navy guy, write me. He's like this white, straight guy from like Oklahoma, which is in America above Texas. And he was like, there's a scene in it where the lead character has to go get his birth certificate after many years spent away from his mother's home. And this white dude wrote me, and he's like, that happened to me. I had to go to my dad's house to get my birth certificate, and it was so awkward, and it was so intense, and I'd never seen anything like that in a military movie before. And he wrote me on Instagram and said, thank you for telling our story. And I was like, whoa, I never thought someone like this would see my experience as their experience. That type of stuff happened all the time. But then there's also, the other side of it too, where, some people wanted, my movie is neither pro-military nor is it anti-military. And I think we're living in very polarized times. And the reason I made the film is because the thing that I went through a lot of hell in the Marine Corps. I still suffer psychologically from a lot of the things I had to endure during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, when it was illegal for gay people to serve. And even though that's true, I got something greater in that when I joined, I was at the lowest moment in my life. I thought I was absolutely worthless. There was no hope for me. I was useless to the world. And then I got to boot camp, and a drill instructor said to me, you are important and you matter because you have a responsibility to protect the person to your left and to your right. And that responsibility, that trust, right, I held on to it, and I wrote it from a homeless shelter right here, right now. And that's why I made the film, because I think in these polarized times, we need to remember that sure, you might have a political point of view, you might be anti this, pro that, but we are all human beings. We are all interdependent on one another, and we all deserve the opportunity to be heard, even if we disagree. And if we do that, it creates a conversation to where maybe we can end up in a better place than when we started. And that's why the film exists. So, there's been some reactions to me not being anti-military in the movie, and it's not that I'm like trying to gloss anything over, but at the end of the day, I've lived a life where I've had to take the silver lining from a lot of, dark and cloudy situations. And this moment in my life is much the same.
Thanks so much for sharing this. I mean, this is sort of like the perfect entry into the film, isn't it? It was very interesting when I first saw the film, because a bunch of Europeans or Germans said like, oh, it's a very American film. Would you consider it a very American film?
Yeah,
I don't think everybody has a military.
yeah.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking
I mean,
too.
I think it's universal in that these are themes of belonging. Who wouldn't walk over hot coals for their parents' validation? Who hasn't totally just contradicted themselves, embarrassed themselves, just so that your mom or your dad can say, "I love you, I respect you," right? So in that regard, it's universal. But I think the American condition is worthy of global dissection. This is an identity that has an outsized impact on the world, and I think what my film offers is an inside point of view into all those contradictions and nuances of that I feel are useful to a global audience, even though it is, this is this is what Hollywood is, rags to riches. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's Rocky. I always tell people it's gay black Rocky. You know what I mean? So yeah, there is some, it's not jingoistic in any way. I'm not saying America, fuck yeah, but I'm where I'm from, and there's
definitely criticism.
And there's a lot of critique, but I'm where I'm from, and the circumstances that I had to overcome are uniquely American as well, right? We are a country that has very spotty history of race, especially when it comes to black people. We are a country that is wildly homophobic, hypermasculine, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people around the world take that example and try to recreate it in their own jurisdiction. So, I think the film is universal, but I'm an artist. Basquiat's an American painter. You know what I mean? Like Picasso's from Spain. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is.
Did you want to expand on that a little? Because you had a reaction as well.
No, I think if anything, I think that the thing that's important about the movie is how it shows men, like Rosales in the film. He's heterosexual, but how they show how men can love other men and men can help other men and be sensitive with them. And he shows, he detoxify toxic masculinity in a way as a drill instructor, which is, I think, is an important image for people to see.
I mean, those are beautiful last words. I think we should leave it at that. Watch the movie tomorrow.
Please.
Everyone, tell everyone else to be there. Have more questions tomorrow about the movie.
I'm going to quiz you.
And we want to give you another recommendation. Tonight, there's the premiere of another beautiful, beautiful film from the UK, Pretty Red Dress, at 10 p.m.
And the director will be here.
And the director will be here, Dionne Edwards. She couldn't be here today, unfortunately, because her flight got delayed, cancelled, whatever. It's a bit mixed getting people. It's a little complicated getting people to Munich right now. But we are making it happen. And the producer is here, so welcome. Tell everyone tonight, 10 p.m. tomorrow at Rio, The Inspection, Chester, Elegance. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for
coming.
Thank you for coming.
Nice to meet you. I know.